Okay, hi everyone. So with me being out, the plan is that I'm going to do a bunch of videos for the lessons. I'm shooting this on my phone, so I'm pretty sure I have to break this up into like 5 or 10 minute clips. So some of the videos may be in several pieces, but we know you guys are tech savvy, so we'll make do. So before we start, you should have this note sheet in front of you. Hopefully your copy is hole punched, and this is going to go in the note section of your binder. Um, Let me also say that I am using pen. I would like you to use pencil. I'm only using pen because it just shows up better on videos. And I don't have the greatest handwriting to begin with. Let's see what else. So yes, taking these notes is mandatory. As you know, you're still going to have a binder check in some way, shape, or form. It probably won't be done by me. I'm thinking Mr. Jones or someone else might wind up doing your binder checks, but yes, you need to take these notes, and obviously they are important for completing your assignments. Okay? So with that, let's get started. All right, so we're moving on to the third unit, and what we're going to do is start talking about functions and relations and how you tell them apart. Okay? So a function is just simply a mathematical rule that has an input and an output. So for example, an input might be that if I put in 4, I get out 10. If I put in 5, I get out 11. If I put out 6, I get out 12, etc. It's just a rule that our output is going to increase by 1 each time. But we'll get into that later, okay? So first we're going to start by filling out this chart on what the difference is between a function and a relation. I've already written the definition of a function, okay? A function is a mathematical rule such that for every input, there's only one output. One thing in gives you one thing out, okay? That's really all you need to know. A relation is just anything that's not a function. Okay, sorry about the handwriting and covering it up. It's a little awkward to do this with holding my phone, but okay. All right, so we have this chart, and I want to take a look at a couple of examples that are based on what we just wrote on this chart, all right? And then we're going to come back to the blank where it says vertical line test in a little bit, okay? So let's take a look at example 1. Is the following a function or a relation, all right? So we have this thing called a mapping diagram, okay? And this is just, as the name would imply, just a map that tells you what every input gives you in terms of an output, okay? So the way we read this is when our input is 10, our output is 15 because the 10 is connected to the 15 by the arrow, okay? So 10 gives us 15. So 10, I'm going to write 10 gives me 15, okay? Well, our next input is 20. What does 20 give us? 20 gives us 45. All right. Next input is 30. What does 30 give you? Well, the 30 is connected to the 25. All right. And our last input on the mapping diagram is 40. What does 40 give us? Well, that's connected to 35. Okay. So if we take a look at what we have, this input gives me only one output. Input only one output. Input, only one. Input, only one. Okay? So, because this mapping diagram tells us that every input gives me only one output, this is a function. Oh, where am I? Okay. Function. All right. Now, how would you have a scenario where an input would have more than one output? Well, let's say the 10, for example, was also connected to the 25, okay? You don't have to write this down, but I just want to show you. Let's say we're going to keep it connected to the 15, but I'm also going to add in another arrow to the 25. Well, then on my list, I would also have 10 gives you 25. And this input, the input of 10, has two different outputs. Therefore, it would not be a function, which means it would be a relation, okay? So, what I'd like you to do is, let's take a look at example 2, where we're asked, again, we have a mapping diagram, and we want to know, do we have a relation or do we have a function? So what I'd like you to do is pause the video here, make a list, like we did in the example 1, of what each input gives you in terms of an output, and then determine if we have a relation or a function, okay? So pause the video, take a minute, and go do it, all right? Okay, so here's what you should have done for example 2. Well, A gives us X. I know we don't have any numerical values here, we don't have any numbers, but that's fine, doesn't matter, it's just inputs, outputs, okay? B gives you Y, C gives you Y, D gives you Z, okay? So, our definition of a function is that every input, every one of these, the inputs always come first, has only one output, okay? A has only X, B has only Y, C has only Y, D has only Z, all right? So, yeah, it's true that every input has only one output, okay? A only gives us X, B only gives us Y, etc. Now, this problem is trying to trick you because you have two of the same outputs here, okay? But your inputs here are different. They're B and C, all right? So, this is a function, okay? All right, so next, what I'd like to do is we're going to turn over the paper. We're going to look at 4. We will come back to 3 in a moment. Pause the video for a minute and go solve example 4. Please write out your work like we did in examples 1 and 2. Okay? All right, so for example 4, it's out of order. All right, we have the input of 3 gives us an output of 2. We have 5 gives us an output of 4. And 7 also gives us an output of 4. Okay? So again, this example is trying to trick you a little bit. What's the trick here? Well, this output 6 isn't being used. It's just, extra information. All right? And we have the same output being used more than once. But these are different inputs, okay? 5 gives us 4, 7 gives us 4, all right? Thing we need to keep in mind, the definition of a function, do all 3 of these things have only one output? And yeah, they do. 3 has only 2, 5 has only 4, 7 has only 4, okay? So therefore, the answer to this one is yes, it is a function, all right? Okay, what I want to do is example 5, and then we will come back to example 4 after we fill in a little bit more of the notes, all right? In example 5, we have this table. Well, What we want to do is convert this table into one of the mapping diagrams that we have. How do we do that? Well, we have to know that X is our input and Y is our output. Okay, so we're going to make our own mapping diagram, and then it'll be easy from there, just like we have done with the previous examples. Okay, so I'm going to make this mapping diagram. I'm going to go like this: input X, all right, output Y. All right, well, what are our different inputs? We have -3, 0, 3, 8, and -10. Okay, and then for our outputs, we have 6, we have 8, we have 20, we have 4, and notice we have 8 again. Well, we don't need to repeat that, okay? You only need to have it on the chart once. So let's see, we're going to connect our inputs to our outputs. We have -3 gives us 6, 0 gives us 8, 3 gives us 20, 8, 4, and -10 to 8, okay? And again, we're going to ask ourselves, does every input have only one output? And yeah, it does. Okay, -3 has only 6. 0 has only positive 8. 3 has only 20. -8 has only 4. No, I'm sorry, not -8, positive 8. And then -10 has only 8. All right, each of these has only one of those. So yes, it is a function. All right. Now, let's look at the table on the right. Okay, so again, we have to make a mapping diagram. Let's do that. Input X, output Y. Okay, so my different inputs, we got -2, 0. We have -2 again, so like we were saying before, we're only going to include it once. We have 7 as well as -8. Outputs, we have 6, 8, 20, 4, and 8 again, so we'll only include it once. Okay, let's match our inputs to our outputs. -2 gives me 6, 0 gives me 8, -2 gives me 20. Okay, should have noticed something there. 7 gives me 4, and -8 gives me 8. Okay, what should you have noticed there? Well, this input, -2, has two different outputs. All right, if we look at this chart over here, -2 gives me 6. It also gives me 20. All right, so is this a function or relation? Well, do we have the case where every input has only one output? No, we do not, because this input, -2, -2, has the two different outputs. So is this a function or is it a relation? It is a relation. Okay. All right, so we have answered the entire back and we've done the whole front except the part where we have graphs. Okay. What you need to know for the graphs is we're going to use something called the vertical line test when we have graphs. Okay. Vertical line tests, which we're going to use only for graphs, okay, function if vertical line touches graph once, okay? More than once, it's going to be a relation, okay? So it's just like we were talking about. If the vertical line that we're going to draw in touches the graph only once, that means every input is going to have only one output, and therefore it's going to be a function. If the vertical line that we construct to the graph hits the graph more than once, that means there's some input that has more than one output, and therefore it's not a function, it is a relation. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to go to example 3 and see how that works. All right? So on example 3, the first one, I'm going to draw in a vertical line in a random spot. How about here? Okay? How many times does that vertical line hit the graph? Once. I'm going to draw it again. Once, 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 okay? We can keep going, but clearly it's going to hit once and only once everywhere, right? So, is this a relation or a function? It is a function, okay? Please hit pause and try the circle one on example 3 on your own, okay? All right, so what you should have done with this, draw a vertical line in a random spot, doesn't really matter where. Well, that first vertical line, it hits here, it hits here. So the vertical line intersects our graph more than one time. Is a relation or a function? Well, like we talked about a minute ago, it is a relation, all right? There's some input over here that has, oops, sorry about the video, that has more than one output. So this is a relation, it is not a function. Okay. All right, so you should be all set to begin the assignment, which I believe is called Shapiro/Clark, identifying functions. It's number 2 on the checklist. As of the time I'm shooting this video, I'm not sure of the due date, but you should have the due date for the assignment marked on your checklist, okay? What else? Something else I wanted to mention that I can't think of. Oh yeah, there's several quizzes throughout this checklist, so questions like this will certainly be on the quiz, and I guess that's where I will stop.